I was going to try something. Since no one listening to any of this or seeing this actually knows where it's going, I don't see any reason why I cannot try and have you turn up the heat on your own little winter of disbelief. Yeah. Increase the tempo. It should be possible, and that's what I was going to try to get some of you to consider on your own. Taking as a very well-known springboard that we have talked about, sketched many, many ways. There is a neural area not just beyond dualistic, dichotomous, polarized thought. There is an area possible that's beyond the awareness of the limitations thereof, that is, of the first. Seeing the apparent nature of the opposites running life initially certainly seems to be some sort of progress, and in a sense it is. But simply seeing opposites ultimately, and I'm inferring now that some of you people should be awfully close to the ultimately, is insufficient. I mean, how much can you do with it after a certain length of time? Those of you who haven't been able to see it, I can say press on. Those of you that say, well, I get a glimpse of it and then I forget about it, hell, tell me you're breathing. That's all you're saying. Because all you got to do is turn around in the ordinary conditions of life and not be on your toes to such a degree that Colonel Gillette, were he alive, would want to take your toes and try to market them for people to shave by. If you're ordinary, all you got to do is be staying around under almost any condition and somebody come up and pick your pocket. Somebody come up and roll over your foot in a parking lot. And you immediately feel the ordinary sense of injustice. You ordinarily right then will forget any idea about some sort of non-polarized view. That's just the nature of it. I have suggested to you, if you recall, that even, I didn't put it in a negative sense, but even blessed great Buddha hollered caramba the first time he saw an unassisted triple play or a jumbo 747. You remember that one after all these years? Put it to you another way. Well, I don't even have to put it to you. There's stories in the Old and New Testament about all these great guys of Moses and Jesus suddenly getting extremely pissed. Like, what's your, where you going, huh? All you're going to say is, I'm alive. So it's not a matter that all of you in some way continually can walk around and realize that there is a, not because I say it, but because at times you can see it and you can feel the energy of it, that there is a dichotomous, a polarized, as really as I've been referring a better, I was trying to get the stakes already several weeks ago, is why I was bringing in polarized, rather than things being divided into two. But either way, rather than being concerned that you don't have a continual awareness, that you cannot remember every time that somebody does slam the door on your fingers, every time somebody does disappoint you and break your little heart. Just because you can't remember that does not mean that any sort of awareness of the dichotomous, polarized nature of life is not very soon insufficient. And even if you don't feel it's insufficient, if you can hear any of what I was going to try and sketch out tonight, perhaps you will see on your own that, hey, what I thought I knew is insufficient. Not to make you feel bad, but there's somewhere else to go. Here, not theoretically and not just talk. For one thing, no matter how progressive and how fresh it may sound, if you can recall, the first times that you began to actually see that life is, quite properly, inescapably, unavoidably, as far as you could see up until now, divided up into a polarized nature, that everything exists in opposites, and it's not because it's evil against good. It might as well be called purple against orange. It might as well be called not Arabs against Jews or Arabs against Muslims, against Hindus, North against the South. You might as well be saying that it's nylon versus dacron. It is simply the nature from all ordinary views in the three-dimensional world, it is the nature of there being a polarized division of apparent opposites. to some degree. Things working either in opposition, according to how you're looking at it, or in tandem. But there they are. Now, regardless of the fact that it does seem to be a step forward, which it is, in a sense, to be able to see that, what does it actually tell you? It is not really a full, complete explanation of anything. But no explanation is a complete explanation. Perhaps I'll bring up that was a Kairoot, if you recall, from a day or so ago, the way in which that can be interpreted for another use. But no explanation is a complete explanation. None. No one's. No time, no place. All explanations are born outdated. There is no escape from that. There's no sense to even talk about it any further. I'm just telling you a fact. You can grab that from either end you want to, or either position, that not only are all explanations, or no explanation is a complete explanation. You can either start there, try and remember it, or it's simply the fact that all explanations, all explanations, don't even consider they're stillborn because they are operational, but they are born outdated. As soon as they are born, as soon as they are known, they are outdated for certain uses. And that brings up something else, that a better response to any human question is almost any response that is not already given and known. As always, I'm going to try and bring this down eventually to a quite solid electrical chemical basis. But for a second, consider the extreme non sequitur basis of that. That almost any explanation that's not already known, any response, let's say, instead of explanation, any response is better than whatever response is already known. I'm not going to stop long and point out that in the ordinary world, none of this is really operational. If you could see it along these lines, it would not interfere. You could still be a scientist, you could still be a roofer, and anything in between. But of course, in the flow of energies that move the secondary world, the three-dimensional world, this is non-operational. Because you cannot say in the 3D world, you cannot say that the response to any question that someone is now trying to come up with, let's say they were back to worrying about what is 2 plus 2, or what is, can somebody actually give us the latest, or perhaps someone can, the latest thinking along the lines of what would be a unified field theory, and somebody says it. You cannot take that along with what I've just said, that is, that the response to any human question, a better response is going to be almost any response that's not already known, because you cannot say that in the 3D world. It would wreck everything, and of course it's not going to happen. You do follow. It's just absolutely, it's beyond insane. It's just inoperable, because in the three-dimensional world, the point of questions is this kind of movement of polarized ideas, so that there seems to be a question. And by question, you can take it to its widest extremes, problems, etc. But there seems to be a question. Not just the injustice and the hunger going on, but the question in the secondary sense of why is there injustice? There are always answers to questions. And whatever the answers are, whatever the prevailing response is, that's whatever the prevailing response is. If you were living in a Muslim country, real fundamentalist, let's say, that their general response to why is there injustice would be, it's the will of Allah. Let's just say that. That would be the response. And if you were living in the Western world using Arabic numbers, and the question is, what is 2 plus 2? The prevailing answer last time I heard was 4. there is nothing past that. There is nothing to be gained whatsoever by trying to go past that. But in the sense of trying to move yourself in a neural area, the fact of the matter is that to all of the questions, a better response is almost any response other than the one known. All right, to go beyond, it's not as nebulous as it all sounds yet. I'm going to try to round it up, all these little Mustang thoughts. To personally go beyond simply listening, or what might seem to be describable possibilities or conditions of this kind of stuff, whether I'm talking historically or hinting around about contemporary possibilities. To go beyond it, you have got to get some idea of the word we have been of late pushing, in case you hadn't noticed, variety. And you have got to have your own personal view that the energy behind what I'm inferring by variety has got to be boundless. Absolutely boundless. To try and give it a little more verbal description, neurally, anything past the stage of yammering, and this is not exempt in a sense. I'm yammering to stand here, you're yammering. If all you do is listen, it can be a nice hobby, it can be entertainment. But to get beyond that, you have got to internally, you have got to personally find that there is a position that is really even beyond variety. It is more VOV. It's a variety of varieties. It is VOV, it is a variety of views, but not dichotomous views. Not even if you got good enough to understand how man is operating physically, which you can find out in med school or reading a book in a certain sense, all the way to it symbolically, such as the overlap of bifocal vision, and how it is that I've tried to get you to consider that where even thinking overlaps, and that normally it would just seem to make up the kind of peripheral and overlapping vision, if we're speaking literally, that gives depth to human sight. That to be able to think, you have got to see how things overlap. And that is where it comes in the beginning, to be able to see that right and wrong are dancing together, no matter who calls it. Up and down, left and right, looking with one eye and looking with the other eye, thinking this and then going, well, thinking that, is for them to ever come into depth. For the landscape to ever have any meaning to you, it is where everything overlaps. And in the beginning, I am suggesting for most of you that it seems to be quite naturally, and I played along with it. I was partly responsible, you might say, or what you were hearing here, of seeing that it is where everything overlaps that the first secret lies, that you have got to have an awareness that I cannot look out here and see any one area. Not in the primary sense. I mean, in the secondary sense. In the primary sense, this is all of no consequence, as we were just talking about the last time. But in the secondary, is to see that whatever my intellect lays upon in any area is being the right answer, or the proper answer, or the proper question even, is insufficient. Anybody should know it. Once you see it, you go, not the nature of my stupidity, not the nature of my education, but you suddenly realize that no one alive that's ever talked about this knew what the problem was, or else they wouldn't have had the problem. That the problem was seeing only like with one eye and going, well, yes, I can see that view, and then, well, yes, I can see that view, and then it begins to be progress and beginning to go, ooh, 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 look, I can almost see both views. Ooh, It's not enough. A variety of views, but variety is not variety if it has any conditions. So we're not talking about 2 views, 3 views, 4 views to get it past spatial limitation. We're not talking about it can't be any particular number of views. Now, it almost, I would assume people that might be hearing this just as they rode by on a sawhorse several times and listening, that it almost became ritualistic, or it almost seemed like part of the dogma is to continue to pound upon, you can't just look at one idea. No, you've got to realize that that idea is being propped up by what it's not. It's being propped up by its opposite. That one thing, one word out of the dictionary is being propped up. If in the English language, I don't know what they are, if there are a million words in the English language, then each one word is being propped up by the other 999. That would almost sound like, if you were just passing by and hearing some of this, that, ooh, well, all right, I'll write that down and I'll believe in that, or I'll pursue that. There's nothing sacred about being able to say, well, wait a minute, for every right, there's a wrong. That is, there are two sides to every argument. 7,000 years ago, somebody scratched that on a bathroom wall in a grotto somewhere. Now, wait a minute, there are two people still say it. I mean, you can pass for being intelligent in a roofer's bar by, of course, belching under your breath, sotto voce belch, and then say something like, do you realize that there are two sides to every argument? And assuming the roofers are not so engrossed with fun, it's late in the evening where they all want to jump on you and tar you. Somebody somewhere, somebody will say, my, I had no idea that you were so There is nothing sacred. There is nothing ultimately, past a point, there is nothing even beneficial to say, well, there are two sides to every argument. There's certainly, of course, nothing that's gained by it if all you are is a mechanical spokesman for some energy of life that people just say that, because many people have been saying that. But to even see it on your own, that's two. Then to say three. The way we have talked about in many ways the E-pool being three factors, three forces, that even once you see that, wait a minute, for every truth, no matter who calls it, for every truth there's falsehood. For every good there's an evil. For every safe, the guy was out. But then, wait a minute, if this guy was safe, and at the same time in another world he was out, how about everybody's in the dugout, everybody in the stands, everybody not playing? So there are three. There's nothing sacred about that. But to begin to be able to think in that way is certainly not philosophically, not psychologically, but it is doing something. And now we're stuck with the polarization of words again, because I'm inclined to say it begins to do something to your intellect. Except for those of you that are good tonight, your intellect begins to do something to that. So because it's not that causes your intellect to change. But wait a minute, in that case you mean if you've got the kind of intellect that once you hear such as this, then it begins to change what you see. Right. All right, now you got it. There is nothing sacred, there is nothing important, there is nothing eventually useful to having two views. Yes, I can see both sides of the argument. Three views. Yes, I can see both sides of the argument, and I realize that neither one are right or neither one are incorrect. There is something else afoot here. This idea about there being three forces, hey, that's heavy. Four. At least four are going on at the three-dimensional level. But even if you get that good, so what? There's nothing. It's not to get to where, well, I can think in three ways. I can think in three varieties. Not only good and evil and all that crap now. Now I can look upon life, or I can think about life sometimes at least. It's chocolate, vanilla, and tutti frutti. Four. Not only can I think about chocolate, vanilla, and tutti frutti, I can think now about the hours that the ice cream parlor is open. I have now moved it from just space into a temporal zone. It doesn't matter. There is no particular number. It's what I was trying to infer by variety. To say that if somebody were to say this, or if I were to say it for somebody, they could reach the point that in a way that defies any ordinary description of man's neurology, physiology, that somebody could not only now, forget psychological descriptions, but that somebody, that the actual operations of their nervous system here, the secondary world, that the operations are such that they're beyond AC, DC, they're beyond polarized energy flows, that it now entails three aspects. You can't even describe that. Then if I say, well, it entails four aspects, that they are now thinking in a way that they are in no wise limited by the polarization that normally controls, as it should, the health, the well-being of the individual human nervous system. There's nothing sacred about that. 4 is not enough. If you get to where you could do it with 4, if that was a valid description, 4 is not enough. There is no particular number. It's what I'm trying to infer by variety. There is no number. Well, a good old example that we haven't used in years, if you got good enough, if we were talking about the topography of the three-dimensional world, good old planet Earth, and over here you had a farmer praying for rain. It's been such he's going to lose the crops, his family's going to lose the farm, his little children are going hungry, etc. Just over a little ways, some roofers. They're praying that the day stays clear. Same problems. They got to pay for the homestead, etc. So, if you could float up high enough, a little bit, neurologically speaking, you get to a point and you could go, hey, I can see both sides. That is weird, or whatever people in the city would say. That's heavy, that's strange. I never thought about that. It's 2 decent people. Of course, they represent large numbers of people. But 2 otherwise decent, God-fearing, democratic Christians, or whatever. And here this farmer is rightfully praying for rain. Actually praying, believing that in some way that cosmic forces should look upon him individually. And right down the street, just over the horizon a little bit, are these roofers, these carpenters. If it rains, they're not going to... If you could see a little higher, I mean, those 2 descriptions are not enough. Go up a little higher and you could have... Let's bring it up to date. We could have... Plus, this was even good. My third example, I'm going to give you a third example split in 2 that are on the surface in conflict themselves to make one. Polluters and environmentalists. A third group, they're praying for rain constantly, or at least daily. The polluters will wash away their sins, and the government won't catch them, and environmentalists are already aware of what's going on, and they're praying for rain. So there you've got at least 3. One group praying for rain just enough to get the crops going, another one praying for enough not rain, just for them to catch up with their bills and get their roofing done. And then another group is praying that it's got to rain every day, or boy, all right, that's done for. And the Environmental Protection Agency is going to get the polluters, and as far as the environmental is concerned, if it doesn't start raining and wash away some of this stuff, our own pollution is going to kill us. There is somewhere else, and it's not just in the direction I can draw, to keep going higher, because if you're going higher, you're going to have to start, if I was going to describe it, you're going to have to start seeing each and every story of each and every person on this planet. That each and every person, instead of just making broad categories that all roofers, or a bunch of roofers over here want dry weather, and then a bunch of carpenters right down the street, a bunch of farmers are wanting rain. If you got up higher and you still stuck with this kind of description, this kind of thought, even, as I admit to you, even at one time was radical for you. If you stay with that and you go up any higher in the kind of direction we described, like, well, you get up higher and higher and you go off the planet, what are you going to say then? The best verbal description you could give was, well, I'm to the point now that I recognize that there is 15 billion stories going on that planet. There are 15 billion people that have right now some feeling toward whether it rains or not. What if you could do that? What if you could suddenly look upon the planet Earth and realize there are 15 stories on the naked planet? Then what? I'm not saying it wouldn't be interesting, but then what? What does that tell you? Somebody scratched that on a grotto bathroom wall 7,000 years ago, believe it or not. I don't mean they understood it and it hadn't had any effect, but what if you could see that? Which, in varying degrees, is a fact. 15 different little stories. 15 billion little cells. But if you saw that, what would it do? Now, if I was talking to an ordinary person, ordinary consciousness was hearing this, intelligence, somebody might say, well, that would be surely the supreme, perhaps they'd probably want to call it mystical state or experience, because then you'd understand the sanctity of each individual person, that each person has their own little problems. Each person has their own little wagon to pull along. I mean, that's new. Now, it would certainly be new if you could see it. It would be your nervous system would not in any way resemble what your brain is now to be able to do that. But I'm asking you to consider, by the best verbal descriptions that we can suppose, trying to picture, if you could do that, to where you could actually see it, what? You've heard that before, just under other guises. Well, yeah, that's true. All you got to do is be religious. For any religion on this planet, any great institutionalized religion, big enough to be tax exempt, they're telling you, well, even the infidels, I don't know, that's God's business. All I got to deal with them, but everybody's got their own problems. Everybody got their own story. We're all in some way special, unique in the eyes of the great gods. Just to be able to see that, to even to describe it outside religious terminology, that's why I'm trying to get you to see that there is finally a limit. What if you could see that? I hate to say it, but I'll go ahead. So what if you could see it? First time you saw it, and maybe 2 or 3 times after, you'd go, wow. Of course, I am being funny because the first time you saw it, wow, ain't going to begin to cover it. You'll probably have to lay down. Or ask them if they're still requesting what your favorite drug is. Not that you want it, it's just that you wonder how much does that go for on the street, because if I could package what's going in my brain now, I'd make a fortune. There is an area that cannot be described. I can't even draw it. It's not just going up higher and higher and seeing more and more that everybody has their own little story and their own little problems. The descriptions finally stop at what seem to be numbers. That is, well, I can see that life is polarized. Don't give up yet. I'm still trying to sneak up on you. We still got 30 minutes. I'm not even close yet. So don't feel like you missed it, or don't feel like it's not going anywhere. It's not to begin to see more and more of the complexity on the basis of any known number, any known division, any known description. It's not to say to yourself that, wait a minute, everything I ever knew in life, I'm beginning to realize was wrong. Well, that's correct. But what does that give you? An ordinary person would say, well, no, I don't believe that's true, but if you were correct, and if you say that everything that I know, everything the feeling about what kind of guy I am and all that, yeah, you're saying all that's wrong. Yeah, I could say that. Jesus, I don't believe it, but that would be absolutely astounding. Some of you should realize, because you've already been through it, that's not astounding. Now, back at city level it is, even to hear about it, much less for it to have them, just to hear about it. If you said everything you know, I mean, the kind of guy you think you are, all the peeves, all the neuroses, all of the talents, everything about you is wrong. I mean, you understand, if I was talking to an ordinary person, you understand the difference between heads and tails on a coin, right? All right, if we consider just metaphorically that everything you know about you is heads, okay? It's tails. Of course, all they can do is go, well, you know, that's insane, I hear what you're saying, but if that were true, it'd be astounding. It wouldn't. Now, it would there, but you understand what would be astounding about it? What if you were heads? What if you were on a piece of paper, what if you were page 22? And I said, nah, everybody that believes they're page 22, they're actually page 23. And in some way, and you went, I don't believe that, but hey, if you got the power, come turn me. And if I came and I turned you, I turned the coin over, and you realize, wait a minute, everything I thought about me is wrong because now I'm just the opposite. And I said, yeah, I told you. And you went, wow. That's all fine, but now think about it. Those of you that you've just been through it, many of you, in a sense. Is it really wow? Would they even know? If I could turn somebody, if it were true, that everything people think they know and everything they think the kind of guy they are is diametrically, that is polarized, reversed, and I could turn them over, would it actually be, wow? I got to tell you, they wouldn't even notice it. That's why you can't have abrupt, real change in life. It's just partial change. It's gradual change. That's why, again, for instance, a drunk can't quit drinking without talking about it. Ordinary people can't simply do something. The polarization, the change, is not really change. And even if it was, it would be so astounding nobody would notice it. That if indeed everybody was their opposite, that if indeed it were true that everything you know about everything and yourself is wrong, and I could turn you over, it wouldn't be, well, they wouldn't even notice it. That is part of the point of low dramatics, that there is no magic number. There is a way in which you start that you have to see that there is a polarized basis of everything, all the way from effects of gravity to standing upright, to being upright, to thinking, being able to digest your food physically, pizza, and being able to digest the food that goes in up here. But then to see that, there comes a time that the number 2 is no longer magic. 3 is not magic. 4 is not magic. Being able to rise above, even if you could do it literally, the planet and go, wow, there are 15 billion different stories, and not a one of them actually better than the other. One person's story, one person's life is no better than anybody else's. Wow. Oh, wow, wow, wow. You've heard it before. Yeah, but I never saw it. Okay, now you saw it, so what? Well, now I realize they're telling the truth. Yeah. You have got to see that what seems to be all of the different stories, whether it be 2, 3, 4, or 15 billion, that the stories are not important. The explanations are not important. The real variety, the way that you can move internally, is to see that variety has to do with infinite adjacentness. Not in any particular direction. It has to be infinite. I don't mean that just the adjacentness goes on forever, which it does, but the adjacentness itself is infinite. That you can't ask, well, wait a minute, you mean the other side of the coin is over here? Well, all right, if you insist. That sounds open-ended, yeah. Well, wait, just on off chance, you don't mean the other side of the coin is also over here? Yeah, but how about over here? How about up there? How about over here? How about over here? You're getting close to variety. You're getting close to a variety of views. Not any variety of views that has any conditions. Well, now I have different views. Now I can see both sides. Now I can see all 3 sides of the coin. Now I can see all 17 sides of the coin. No variety of view is sufficient unless it's greater than all of the views, that is, all of the variety that preceded it. Which is, I'm suggesting is operational, but again, it is beyond even insane, incorrect, illogical in any ordinary sense. Because you would think, properly so, that variety is variety. But that's why variety is born outdated. Because to get past where you think, it's not variety unless it is greater than the variety that went in front of it. And don't fall into the hands of your own thinking and say, well, I'll do it for you. Well, wait a minute. You mean I was doing all right up until right now? Right. But what's coming up next? Well, wait a minute. At least I'm not losing ground. Sure you are. No, really. No, really, hell. No, wait a minute. I got a variety of views. I'm not near as narrow-minded as I used to be. I'm not as stupid as I used to be. So, you're not as stupid as you are now. Yeah, but I'm better off than I was. Yeah, but you're not better off than you are. It is not variety. That's why you cannot, as silly as it sounds, and I know as intriguing as it sounded when you first heard it, you can't really think the same thing twice. Because if you do, you are killing variety. You're killing the very thing on which this feeds by thinking the same thing twice. Yeah, but some of the things I'm thinking now more than once are important. No, you mean they were once important. Oh, no, they still are. In fact, some of them you told me. Hey, don't blame me. No, one of these just knocked me down. Well, you're staying up now. Well, yeah, but there ain't no yeah, but. The variety continually, and it is even outside the flow of temporal time as it's known. But at any particular moment, it is no longer variety if whatever's going on. And of course, we're talking about variety of thought, not variety that you've learned how to eat gravel instead of pizza. We're talking about here in the secondary world. The variety right now is no longer variety. It's not sufficient unless the variety is greater than any variety that went in front of it. Well, wait a minute, though. But you don't know how great my variety or how limited my variety of thought was up until now. Sorry, really. I'm really sorry. It doesn't matter. And you knew that. The variety is when a variety can have no limitations, can really have no definition. The variety has got to be greater than the variety that preceded it, where it's no longer variety. I was going to say something really profound and deep in the name of ordinary humanity, but why should I fight their battles for? Another aspect. Some of these I'm just dragging in that I have let Kairouts strove for the last several times. Variety can. I'm still using variety in a supersensual sense. Variety can, and doing this, variety must move in all possible secondary directions. It's not only that there is no limit, there is no magic number. There is no, well, I can see with 2 different views, I can see with 3 different views, I can see with 17 different views. That doesn't, I mean, if yesterday was the first time you could see with 17 different views, all right. But don't bring it up now. But hey, you don't know how astounding that was. Well, yeah, compared to 16 views, I guess it was. But 17 views, you say you're the one that brought it up. I never said anything. You said, I can see with 17 views, all right? So, not only are the numbers not important, that it's no longer variety unless it supersedes, unless it is greater than the variety that went right before it. You mean yesterday? Yeah. You mean 2 minutes ago? Right. If it's not greater, it's no longer variety, but also, in the secondary world, it's not variety unless it can move in all possible directions. All right, I'll play humanity's part. What does that mean? What the hell do you think it means? All possible directions. But how about? But notice, it's not an attack. That's how people think. That is the way the ordinary neural area of the brain, the human nervous system, operates. But that is not variety. Compared to certain operations of the intellect that most of you have enough awareness of that we don't have to give a sales pitch, you know that the way that your brain normally operates is not the only way that that sucker can operate. You either know that through your own experience, or you are really, to continue showing up, you are really, I'll say lightheartedly, desperate again for a hobby. Your TV must have been broken now for several years. Let me see if I can now turn up the heat. I'm going to give you a great, I think, all of you will agree, initial example. A way that you could run a school of philosophy. There are threads of this been running for thousands of years. Life causes men here and there to pick it up and run with it. It is at the heart of the glue that seems to hold together human life, observable three-dimensional life, the existence of our known universe. It's not only possible to initially see, to have it pointed out and begin to see, and to use it, this idea that everything is connected. How many times have we talked around areas and brought it up? It sounds like the whole basis of this sort of thing. Maybe in a more complex manner than ordinary people think. Such as the drawings that, well, it's not as simple as saying, boy, I wish it would rain. Everything's connected. Now, you might say you wish it would rain, and I might say, well, aren't you a roofer? Yes, that's why I have my own interest at heart, but, I'm a farmer. And I say, but do you realize your sister, when's the last time you saw her? Well, several years. She moved to Cleveland, married somebody. I never met him. I happen to know the guy is a roofer, and I happen to know they're behind their house payments. And if it rains up and down here, the Mississippi Valley, just a little further, and you're saying that you need rain down here, do you realize if it rains up there one more time, that could be the end of them? And the guy went, wow. Yeah? And I say, makes you stop and think how everything in life is connected. And of course, as all of you know, it's the environmentalists have now taken the ball verbally, intellectually in the city and been throwing it and tossing it around for the last decade or so. You know, the food chain, the interconnectedness of the environment. And it's not only true out there, which only took them 7,000 years to put it in those succinct words, but internally, even psychology keeps stumbling around, religions keep stumbling around, and so we can just simply say, hey, everything is connected. And initially, it is a real step of progression to begin to just periodically, not all the time, but just to think how things are connected. Now, something happens, and at first you want to go, oh, damn. And then you realize, well, how it's connected with this. I have made up stories. Surely by now some of you have made up stories that I've shown how something, a guy trying to get to church on time from years ago, or a woman for the first time trying to get church, or a guy, whatever it was, in Australia, and he hits the mailman, and he drops letters, and the letter falls in a gully, and the letter was coming over here asking this woman on the other side of the world to marry him, and these people's lives get ruined over somebody trying to go to church on time. And that's all, wow, that's heavy. God, that's philosophical. How everything's connected. Okay. In a revolutionist sense, dealing with what I'm telling you is the next step to describe it, a variety of views, what you already think you can see, and I'm not questioning about how everything's connected, also has this message, that nothing is connected, that everything is unconnected. This kind of radical, subversive view, information, if you can get your hands on it or it gets its hands on you, try not to hear the words, because it's beyond them, but we're having to deal with two-dimensional words, what I'm trying to sketch. That information and what it does to the apparent cause and effect of life, not just in a philosophical sense, but in every sense. It absolutely radicalizes, not in any 60 political sense of you people that march in the streets out in Berkeley, but that is basic, that it's at the very root of human thought. The message is that the very things that no one questions can be seen, not just the opposite. Surely by now, all of you would agree in some way. Just to me, if I say, well, if I start out and I hadn't given any kind of warning, was talking about, well, let's pursue a little more since everyone understands everything's connected. Everybody, yeah. There is a way that you can see that everything is unconnected. That the obvious relationships, the obvious, with no morality, no judgment, no nothing but the obvious relationships, such as my favorite aunt just died, and my present state of depression are absolutely unconnected. Now, my little drama, I wasn't trying to infer that there was any side bar story going on. And what I'm telling you, just as an ordinary person, and their sister or their favorite aunt or somebody just died, and you see them, and they're feeling depressed. Boy, I wish I could just stop. But I don't guess I You understand, I am not inferring anything. We're not. This is the nature of life. Do I have to just say it? I hate to. Somebody's depressed. They know it. You observe it. They admit it. And maybe you don't even have to ask, why are you depressed? It comes out just very shortly. In fact, they have to go and they just mention, well, I'm going to my aunt's funeral. I mean, what else needs to be said? What else do I have to tell you? You're depressed. A person depressed. A death has just happened very close to them. I mean, that's so obvious that you would think nobody wouldn't have to say, well, that just shows the connectedness of life. I mean, that's not necessary to anybody. To anybody. But can you conceive of this? That there is another place in the universe. I don't mean somewhere else. I mean here. That is totally unconnected. I know the words are falling quickly apart, but I am not being funny. I'm not being cute, and I'm not trying to hide anything behind this. It is not even symbolic, much less metaphorical. I'm just telling you, as far as words will go, that as much as everything's connected, that you are depressed, a person depressed because their father just died. To say that everything's connected, everything is unconnected. To say that everything's connected, just in the most obvious, that there's somebody depressed and their father just died. What could be more connected? Doesn't matter what religion you are, what race you are, what sex you are, what anything you are. And yet, I'm telling you that it is just as radically true that everything is unconnected, including such as this, that the death of somebody close in your state of depression are unconnected. And there's no way, of course, that can be true. Not to ordinary thought. But I'm telling you, there is a place, again, I don't mean in some never-ever land, and not down Alice's looking glass hole. You are in the midst of it. You just can't see it all. Where such undeniable, obvious events are connected. They're not connected, they just are. And it's not questioning either one. It's in no wise questioning that here's a person depressed. It's no way questioning that or saying, well, they just think they're depressed, or they're not really depressed, or where are they depressed on the McLaughlin psychological scale. It's none of that. The person says they're depressed. All right. The person says that their father just died. All right. I'm not questioning any of that. But there is a greater reality. There is a more complex dimension to life wherein these two things are no more related than anything else. This person's state of depression is no more related in any manner whatsoever. It's not connected at all to the death of their father any more than it is a roofer who's out of work. Any more than it is the price of corn futures. They are just simply two things going on. They are two events. They are not connected, they simply are. If such, let us say a view, if such a line of thought was possible for an ordinary person, and in some way I had the power and was devilish and dumb enough that I imposed it on people, you do understand, again, for me to point out, that life as we know it, is that a phrase or not? Life on this planet, human life, would go pooey. That'd be the end of it. It simply would. It would be the end of it. And it doesn't matter, but right quick it'd start here, and within seconds it'd be down to the primary, and humanity would be out chasing dinosaurs. That is, and catching them. At a more complex place, not out there, it's in here. It's out there, but it's out there everywhere. It's not anywhere I can point. It's infinitely adjacent to where you are. Yeah, but wait a minute. Yeah, there's... Yeah, but... Yeah. But no, wait, are you saying, Well, if you're saying that, of course, you're not saying that. Well, sure I am. Don't you understand what the damn word infinite means? No. Yeah, but wait a minute. Then if that's true, then that can't be true. You just don't understand infinite. You don't understand variety. You're not trying. At a place where things simply are, and they're not, it's not a matter that they're connected, it's more a matter, from a more radical approach, that everything is unconnected, even the obvious. When it's unconnected, and they simply are, then it doesn't require, what? Anything else to be said. There is no explanation after that. There is no way to analyze. Are you depressed? Now, of course, I'm really playing with justice again in reality, because all this couldn't happen with an ordinary person. But I asked the person, are you depressed? And he goes, well, yes, I am. Why? There's no reason in the world. The person says. That would be the only thing that would ever approach a real explanation at the 3D level. Of course, after that, that explanation is no good. They've got to improve upon it. But you understand, that could not happen. The ordinary intellect can't do that. And again, may I humbly suggest, the sentence almost rhetorically, if it wouldn't fly, at least you could fold it up and sail it around the office. To say, wait a minute, you're depressed. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I wasn't trying to give you my problem, but yeah. Why? No reason. Of course, not just somebody saying no reason, because nowadays I know that there are theories, ideas floating around that perhaps Freud and modern psychology doesn't have all the answers, and perhaps there's growing statistical evidence that what we call depression could have, it possibly could have some kind of genetic, some kind of electrical, some kind of chemical basis that doesn't matter whether your family beat you or toilet trained you at the age of 14 or not. Forget all that. It's that the ordinary mind cannot say, the ordinary intellect cannot say, that is based on its own interpretation of the energy, of understanding from a variety of views, that, yeah, I'm depressed, if you want to call it that. Why? No reason. Come on. No reason. Well, I mean, you just don't want to talk about it? No, there's no reason. Wait a minute, that's interesting, because I didn't actually graduate in psychology, but I was always interested. Now, wait a minute, you seem to be telling me the truth. I am. So you're saying there's no reason for you to be depressed. That's right. But now, wait a minute, what you're really saying is there's no reason of which your conscious mind is aware. The person goes, well, yeah, I've heard that before, but there's no reason. But there's a reason for everything. Nothing happens in the secondary world, nothing that's sensual, that is ordinary man, can perceive unless it has a because. There is no such thing as that which happens in life for no reason. Now, ordinary intelligence, again, I could make it almost step on that crack in the pavement. But that's the sort of thing that ordinary intelligence, in particular example, one person I'd be talking to would not find whatever it was I put down as an example to be of any consequence. That is, things that apparently are non-polarized, they go on, but you don't notice it. They're non-events. They're past, I think they like to say, what is it? The horizon of consciousness. I don't know what you mean. Because anything that's of any importance to my nervous system is connected to something. If I'm depressed, there's some reason. And you're right, perhaps I don't know what it is. You know, I was just being smart when I told you there was no reason, because you and I both know there's a reason for everything. I don't know what it is. I get depressed every now and then, and sometimes I think I know what it is. Well, sometimes I know what caused me to be depressed. But you're right, sometimes I have these little bouts of being depressed. I should think about it more. I should reflect on it. In other words, everybody, the ordinary intelligence cannot perceive that things could be unconnected. And in the beginning it seems to be, and it was, a step forward for you to begin to think in such a way that everything is connected. That nothing happens that does not affect, that is a giant network, a nexus tied together. I even continue to call it the life of life, the body of life. to which you're not an exception. Everything in you. What you eat affects the way you dream. If you're ordinary, what happened to you as a little nipper is still affecting you now as a big nipper. All of that's connected. And yet, this is not theory. And I'm not playing with words. I'm telling you, it is equally as correct that everything is unconnected. But this, if you want to try and deal with it, is a radical step in your own neural system from what we have been mapping out of late. That everything can be unconnected, not with ordinary people. You certainly can't build a philosophy out of this, and it would tear up the three-dimensional world if it were, in fact, true. If I could bring it down, me or somebody bring it down to where this was now the operational last statement, it was a period to the sentence as to what reality is, and I impose that on the three-dimensional world, and it's not delusion. Do you hear me? The ordinary intellect, yours and everybody else's, has to see. It could not operate. It's not a theory. Would not operate unless it saw that everything is connected. And of course, ordinary people cannot see that continually. They don't see that everything's connected, but they see that everything's connected. That is, whatever happens here in some way is connected with that. I'm depressed because my sister died. What the hell you want out of me? I'm just human. I know. They are totally unconnected. Except for the intellect to operate in the three-dimensional world, that is not so. It cannot be so. It will never be so. That it is connected. What could be more obvious? I don't get depressed once or twice in my life, so it's not. But I'm telling you what, I'll admit I'm depressed now. What the hell you want? I cried because my father died. What do you want out of me? Things are. If you want to try and pursue a taste, some of you are about ready for it, beyond just any ordinary thought, beyond us yammering back and forth. Not that it doesn't serve a purpose. But consider, no longer that everything's connected. Everything is unconnected. And it affects nothing. Well, other than the fact that ordinary intelligence can't see it because, again, everything would go pooey and all that. Do you know how radical that is? What that does, if you could begin to see it that way, the reality of it, not to see some theory. So what happens, happens. What is, whether it be ideas, whether it be earthquakes. And just because there's an earthquake over here, and a whole lot of people get nervous and can't sleep at night, that's true enough for them. And a lot of them moved that survived. But to say, well, they're now nervous because they lived through earthquakes, that's okay if you're ordinary. That's okay if you plan to live the rest of your life in earthquakes. Yeah, I moved. Yeah, but you didn't move in here. Everything is unconnected. And all the ideas that have sprang forth in religions that have been remembered mystically, transcendentally, and all of that, all over. You can take even major religions and some way you can read into it or try and make a more, or try and derive some secret message, and all the message is always in some way based upon, well, all of this is God's creation, all of this is tied together, and you cannot escape the effects of your causes. You got to reap what you sow. You know, the sinners will be paid off someday. Those who do ill will receive ill, live by the sword, die by the sword. You understand what all that is? All that is saying everything's connected. And it is a step progress if all of humanity began to think more in the lines of, wait a minute, everything I do, if I shoplift, I never thought about it, but if I shoplift again today, it doesn't seem like much, but every time I keep reading that 5 billion people a day in one country shoplift. If they do that, Kmart's, not dumb, they find it out, and all they do is up the prices, and everybody, I should stop that. It's surprising when you think about it, even for my own best interest. Everything's connected, and I should think that. All right, if all of humans begin to think that, you could call that a step forward. It's not really, because things spreading out is not a step forward, but it would seem so. But here would be a real radical step forward, which you can't do in life, but which for you to understand that, hey, that's interesting, other than the fact that everything is unconnected. Some of you, I think, I even encouraged it, felt as though there was a certain kind of freedom that you feel when you begin to understand how everything's connected, that things are not just operating in isolation, and somebody didn't just cheat you. I mean, somebody mistreated you. Somebody cheated you out of some money that you thought you could trust, but then you come to find out, after you got over the initial horror and anger, you find out that something terrible had happened to them. And it begins to make a little more sense about, well, I bet they didn't intend to cheat me. They didn't start out and just sit down to come up with a plan to cheat me. I found out that his father, I didn't know this, he never mentioned, his father has been lingering, holding on, dying of cancer for the last 2 years, and it was costing them. I mean, they couldn't pay it all, but they were being billed over $5,000 a month just to try and treat him. And then the way I blew up, I mean, yeah, he did steal. He stole nearly $20,000 from our business. And I could have killed him. But then I found out every cent of that, plus everything he could steal from anybody else, went to try and keep his father alive. How things are connected. If you think that's a kind of freedom, what I'm trying to infer to you tonight, let me tell you the next step of freedom is to understand that everything is unconnected. There is freedom. There's the next stage of a kind of freedom. And not just out there, and not just somebody who stole money from you and their dying father. In here, well, everything I think, one thing I think leads to another, and one thing prods me to think about something else, or sometimes I think along these lines, and it reminds me of something else. Or it's like to use your words, it's like I kind of explore new territories, and I'll go down one path, and I'll think something and see something, and I'll go somewhere else. And it's like it leads me on, right? Other than this, there is a more radical view that all of that's unconnected. Remember, I was pointing out that life does not tolerate, ordinary people cannot deal with, do not even experience real abruptness. That's why. Because real abruptness is to understand that being depressed is unconnected with my father dying. Unless you're ordinary. It would be quite ordinary to be depressed because your father died. I'm not saying that. But the abruptness is, and not just those kind of examples, those are very crude, but it's in here. That you take the normal flow of energy as you're supposed to in life, running through man, that everything is connected, and that it's, one thing happens, I'm aware of it, I get news, telegram, or somebody calls, your father died. I hate to tell you, your father died. The information goes into your nervous system. The nervous system goes into a state referred to generally as depressed, maybe almost suicidal. There's no way to say that those two are not connected, not if you're ordinary. They are unconnected. From a more radical, a greater view, they are unconnected. And we're past out of tape, which is unconnected to talking, is it not? Other than the fact that I stop every night when the tape runs out. I don't really.